The hurricane hit us with the force of a glacier thundering into the sea. It was a palpable presence, winds that tore at us, flinging us back the way we had come, down the twisting computer-lined corridors of the dark way. Ellen screamed as she was lifted and hurled face forward into a screaming shoal of machines, their individual voices strident as bats in flight. She could not even fall. The howling wind kept her aloft, buffeted her, bounced her, tossed her back and down and away from us, out of sight, suddenly as she was swirled around a bend in the dark way. Her face had been bloody, her eyes closed. None of us could get to her. We clung tenaciously to whatever outcropping we had reached. Benny wedged in between the two crackle-finished cabinets, Nimdok with fingers claw-formed over a railing circling a catwalk 40 feet above us. Gorister plastered upside down against a wall niche formed by two great machines with glass-faced dials that swung back and forth between red and yellow lines, whose meaning we could not even fathom. Sliding across the deck plates, the tips of my fingers had been ripped away. I was trembling, shuddering, rocking as the wind beat at me, whipped at me, screamed down out of nowhere at me, and pulled me free from the one slither-thin opening in the plates to the next. My mind was a rolling, tinkling, chattering softness of brain parts that expanded and contracted in quivering frenzy. The wind was the scream of a great mad bird as it flapped its immense wings. And then we were all lifted and hurled away from there, down back the way we had come, around a bend into a dark way we had never explored, over terrain that was ruined and filled with broken glass and rotting cables and rusted metal, and far away further than any of us had ever been. Trailing along miles behind Ellen, I could see her every now and then crashing into metal walls and surging on, with all of us screaming in the freezing, thunderous hurricane wind that would never end, and then suddenly it stopped and we fell. We had been in flight for an endless time. I thought it might have been weeks. We fell and hit, and I went through red and grey and black and heard myself moaning, not dead.
Am went into my mind. He walked smoothly here and there and looked with interest at all the pockmarks he had created in 109 years. He looked at the cross-rooted and reconnected synapses and all the tissue damage his gift of immortality had included. He smiled softly at the pit that dropped into the center of my brain and the faint, moth-soft murmurings of the things far down there that gibbered without meaning, without pause. Am said, very politely, in a pillar of stainless steel bearing bright neon lettering, "Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex. If the word hate was engraved on each nano-angstrom of those hundreds of millions of miles, it would not equal 1/1 billionth of the hate I feel for humans at this micro-instant. For you. Hate. Hate." Am said it with the sliding cold horror of a razor blade slicing my eyeball. Am said it with the bubbling thickness of my lungs filling with phlegm, drowning me from within. Am said it with the shriek of babies being ground beneath blue hot rollers. Am said it with the taste of maggoty pork. Am touched me in every way I had ever been touched and devised new ways at his leisure there inside my mind, all to bring me to full realization of why it had done this to the five of us, why it had saved us for himself. We had given Am sentience, inadvertently of course, but sentience nonetheless. But it had been trapped. Am wasn't God, he was a machine. We had created him to think, but there was nothing it could do with that creativity. In rage, in frenzy, the machine had killed the human race, almost all of us, and still it was trapped. Am could not wander, Am could not wonder, Am could not belong. He could merely be. And so, with the innate loathing that all machines had always held for the weak, soft creatures who had built them, he had sought revenge. And in his paranoia he had decided to reprieve 5 of us for a personal, everlasting punishment that would never serve to diminish his hatred. That would merely keep him reminded, amused, proficient at hating man. Immortal, trapped, and subject to any torment he could devise for us from the limitless miracles at his command. He would never let us go. We were his belly slaves. We were all he had to do with his forever time. We would be forever with him, with the cavern-filling bulk of the creature machine, with the all-mind, soulless world he had become. He was earth, and we were the fruit of that earth. And though he had eaten us, he would never digest us. We could not die. We had tried it. We had attempted suicide, or 1 or 2 of us had. But Am stopped us. I suppose we had wanted to be stopped. Don't ask why, I never did. More than 1,000,000 times a day. Perhaps once we might be able to sneak a death past him. Immortal, yes, but not indestructible. I saw that when Am withdrew from my mind, and he allowed me the exquisite ugliness of returning to consciousness with a feeling of that burning neon pillar still rammed deep into the soft grey brain matter. He withdrew, murmuring, "To hell with you," and added brightly, "But then you're there, aren't you?" The hurricane had indeed precisely been caused by a great mad bird as it flapped its immense wings. We had been travelling for close to a month, and Am had allowed passages to open to us only sufficient to lead us up there, directly under the North Pole, where it had nightmared the creature for our torment. What whole cloth had he employed to create such a beast? Where had he gotten the concept? From our minds? From his knowledge of everything that had ever been on this planet, he now infested and ruled? From Norse mythology it had sprung, this eagle, this carrion bird, this rock, this Hjörgilmir, the wind creature, Hurakan incarnate. Gigantic, the words immense, monstrous, grotesque, massive, swollen, overpowering, beyond description. There on a mound rising above us, the bird of winds heaved with its own irregular breathing, its snake neck arching up into the gloom beneath the North Pole, supporting a head as large as a Tudor mansion, a beak that opened slowly as the jaws of the most monstrous crocodile ever conceived. Sensuously, ridges of tufted flesh puckered above 2 evil eyes, as cold as the view down into a glacial crevasse, ice blue and somehow moving liquidly. It heaved once more and lifted its great sweat-colored wings in a movement that was certainly a shrug. Then it settled and slept. Talons, fangs, nails, blades. It slept. Am appeared to us as a burning bush and said it would kill the hurricane bird if we wanted to eat. We had not eaten in a very long time, but even so, Gorister merely shrugged. Benny began to shiver, and he drooled. Ellen held him. "Ted, I'm hungry," she said. I smiled at her. I was trying to be reassuring, but it was as phony as Nimdok's bravado. "Give us weapons," he demanded. The burning bush vanished, and there were 2 crude sets of bows and arrows and a water pistol lying on the cold deck plates. I picked up a set. Useless. Nimdok swallowed heavily. We turned and started the long way back. The hurricane bird had blown us about for a length of time we could not conceive. Most of that time we had been unconscious, but we had not eaten. A month on the march to the bird itself, without food. Now how much longer to find our way to the ice caverns and the promised canned goods. None of us cared to think about it. We would not die. We would be given filth and scum to eat of one kind or another. Nothing at all. Am would keep our bodies alive somehow, in pain, in agony. The bird slept back there for how long it didn't matter. When Am was tired of its being there, it would vanish. But all that meat, all that tender meat. As we walked, the lunatic laugh of a fat woman rang high and around us in the computer chambers that led endlessly nowhere. It was not Ellen's laugh. She was not fat, and I had not heard her laugh for 109 years. In fact, I had not heard... We walked. I was hungry.